Blessings. Happy Chinese New Year to you all. Kong Si Fa Chai. Xin Nian Kuai Le. Sawati Pi Mai Jin. And all the other phrases we use. It's a time everybody wishes everybody else to be happy, healthy, successful, rich. But rich in terms of Buddhist practice means rich on the inside. Developing the qualities that will bring you to Nibbana is real wealth, inner wealth, sila, faith in the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, sattha, sila, virtuous conduct, chaka, knowing how to sacrifice, to help, to give up, share, and panya, wisdom, knowing the way to end suffering in your mind. These are our real wealth, so we wish you all to be super rich with this kind of wealth in this coming year. So tonight is also Tuesday night, so we have a few questions have come in, so endeavour to give some answers. The first question, Luang Por, how do we overcome the delusion in the mind that our experience in life doesn't involve a huge amount of suffering? When occasions in life go wrong, we experience suffering and understand the truth. However, when occasions in life are pleasant or neutral, the mind can become deluded and potentially view life as not involving a lot of suffering. Well, that's a very perceptive question. It's the crux of the issue, isn't it? It's why people don't practice, why people don't see the need to practice. And that's why we're so fortunate that we have a Buddha in the world, has come into the world. So the Buddha is an enlightened one, he's also an awakened one. So one who has awakened to the truth, awakened out of delusion. Sometimes they say the teachings the Buddha gave are like, before you had this pot that was turned upside down and then you turned it up to expose things, the way things are. So we need good teachers to explain and remind and point out to us where there is suffering and what is the nature of suffering and how life is, we say, bound up with suffering. Because we become deluded, we become complacent, attached, sometimes we're in denial, sometimes we're just so intoxicated with things we can't really wake up to the stress and suffering and unsatisfactory nature of life. And what is the goal for many people in life is just make as much money as possible, because we tend to equate money with the freedom to follow your desires, get what you want, not have to put up with things that you don't want, don't like. If I have enough money, I'll be all right, I can get rid of every problem, throw money at it. But if you ask somebody with a lot of money, and if they're honest in their answer, they'll probably say, well, even with a lot of money, you still have problems. Sometimes you have more problems the more money you have, because you've got to look after it and invest it and protect it. And there's all kinds of inherent suffering in life that money alone can't get rid of. So the Buddha encouraged us just to wake up to the truth and look more carefully. And that's particularly one of the values of practicing meditation. And also in a quiet place, say like a Buddhist monastery or a meditation center where there's very little distraction. So you come here or some similar place and you're stuck in a room with nothing else in that room, maybe just simple bed, or in a hut in the forest without anything else. How long before you start to feel restless, anxious, bored, fed up, frustrated, annoyed? How long before you start desiring things that you haven't got in that room, in that kuti, in that hut in the forest? How long before you start missing things that you're used to? And not very long at all. For some people it's literally a few moments. For others they might be able to last a bit longer, but then sooner or later they start to crave things, experience discontent, restlessness, physical or mental dukkha, suffering. And that's one of the values of places like this. You know, it's a place to study and learn about suffering, the true nature of it, from your own experience, not just from books, from talks, actually experiencing it in your own mind. And you have to help yourself, so that's why people do meditation retreats or living in monasteries for a while, is because they know, maybe they've already had a glimpse, that it will help them to see and understand the nature of dukkha, suffering. Why do people become kind of complacent or just deny that life has any suffering? You know, make those statements. They say, I'm fine, I've got no suffering, I don't need Buddhism or meditation or any of this. Why can they say that? Well, usually it means they've got enough distraction and enough things around them and enough of the things that satisfy them just to keep going and always try and keep one step ahead of the restless, agitated mind of craving. They hide their suffering, they cover it over. So they always make sure that they've got one more thing to do. So, you know, most people in the world experience a state of mind where you're always planning what you're going to do next. What do I have to do now? Time for work, time for play, time for sleep, time for food, time for sex, time for drink, drugs, time for fun in all kinds of ways. We've always got the next thing to do, and that keeps us going, sustains us. So if you put somebody in a room with nothing to do and no schedule and no plan, they start to struggle a bit. You don't even have to be in a room or anywhere special, you just get someone to sit still for 5 minutes. If they've never done that before, already just the physical pain in the body will make them wriggle around. And then the mind will also start to cry out, I want to do something, go somewhere. What am I doing here, sitting still, doing nothing? What a waste of time. You know, we have all our reactions and we don't yet realize that's suffering. But if you practice following the Buddhist path, and particularly if you bring up mindfulness, clear comprehension, and start reflecting, investigating your experience, you notice, there's little bits of suffering here and there all the way through our day. You sit in one posture, just listening to this talk, maybe you're sitting there. You might not even be on the floor, you might be in a chair, but how long before you wriggle and move in that chair or on the floor? So the very first thing that covers over suffering that the Buddha said is, a delusion, is changing posture. Every day, all through the day, we change posture to cover over the suffering of a human body that can't stay in one posture for very long. Even when we're in bed, we think, I'm in bed, everything's good, we enjoy it, it's comfortable. How long can you lie in bed without moving. If you don't move, you get bed sores after a while. You get aches and pains from lying in bed. However good the bed is, however comfortable, you get sores and pains. And so most people in their evening, in their nighttime period, they move as they sleep, unconsciously or consciously. Sometimes they wake up uncomfortable and they move. If you're a monk staying in the forest, sometimes it's the cold night air. You've got your robes and maybe a blanket or something over you, and in the middle of the night, your feet are exposed, and it wakes you up. And you go, cold feet. So you have to rearrange your robes to cut out every chink of cold air. And it becomes like a battle, you against the cold air when you're camping in the forest, and you get a bit of cold air on your nose, got to cover that. You get a bit of cold air on your feet, got to cover that. Or you turn too much one way and your robes lift up and the cold air gets in under them. Endless battle with cold air when you're camping in the forest. It's dukkha, isn't it? Suffering. We have suffering from heat, from cold, posture, need to change posture, need to cover up, need to cool down. We have suffering from hunger and thirst. If you don't eat for a few days, a week or two, you really start to struggle, depending on how strong you are health-wise. A few weeks and you'll die. If you don't drink for a few days, you'll die, especially in the summer heat. If you can't breathe properly, say you get cold, flu, COVID, or some respiratory disease, you start to really fear for your life because you can't get enough air in through your nose or mouth. If you're underwater, you see the suffering of not having air. If you don't have any equipment with you, you start swimming underwater, very soon you want to come up for air. So you see the attachment to life through your breathing system. So these are just very basic physical types of suffering that we're constantly trying to avoid, outrun, get away from, hide from, distract ourselves from. And then of course there's all the mental suffering. If you say, I don't need to practice Dhamma, I've got no suffering. Well, just stop and ask yourself, have you ever been angry? Everyone's been angry, if only briefly in their life. Some people get angry very intensely, physically and mentally. It's a very intense experience for them. Everyone will have experienced at least mild irritation, annoyance, disappointment. It comes in so many different varieties, but it's all rooted in ill will, aversion. When it hardens, it becomes hatred, cruelty, hatred. Everyone's experienced that. It's just when someone asks you, are you suffering? Do you need to practice Buddhism? You say, no, I don't suffer. We're not being honest, are we? Because we forget or ignore the past. We've all experienced anger. We've all experienced desire, unrequited desire, something you want and you haven't got, so you're mentally agitated. Whether it's big ambitions, huge desires, passions, loves, or just very ordinary, simple little desires like the desire for a drink or a bit of food or to do something. We have desires that are not always getting satisfied every day. So desire and aversion is constantly affecting us, and all it needs is a little bit of mindfulness and awareness, and we start to notice. And then that starts to expose the dukkha, the suffering of human existence. And as I said, even with all the money, wealth, power, prestige, all the good things that the world can offer you, even if you somehow manage to get all that, which you never can anyway, but if you could, you'd still have these things to deal with, because you still get older every day. You know, even if you're number one on Forbes' rich list, you're getting older every day. And with that, there'll be the aches and pains and illnesses, and then the fear of losing what you love and like, separation from your family, separation from your money, if that's what's big for you. Whatever it is that you attach to becomes a basis for suffering. And so the Buddha and his teachings just over and over again encouraging us to look back at the nature of existence and see that there is pain and suffering bound up, mixed up with it. And then to see what is the cause of that, craving and attachment, which feeds back to delusion, ignorance. So of course then also people will say, well, but there's so much happiness and pleasure in my life, happiness from my work, or happiness from my family, or my kids, or this or that. You know, why are you talking so much about suffering? There's so much pleasure. Don't you recognize the pleasures and the happiness of life? Yeah, of course. But unfortunately, the bad news is that subtly and inherently, even in the pleasure and the happiness of life, there's suffering embedded in it, because it's the nature of things to be impermanent, and they go according to causes and conditions. So you love somebody, one day they will get old, get sick and die. You will get old and sick, get sick and die. You love your favorite possession, whether it's jewelry or a phone or a car or whatever it is that you really love in life as material things. Those material things get old and they get broken, and things go wrong, or they get lost, or they get stolen. Nothing lasts in an unblemished, untarnished state. But because we can often source things again, then we cover over the suffering of experience by saying, well, I'll just get a new one. I crash my car, I'll get a new one. I break my phone, or it gets out of date, I'll get a new one. I'm bored with my partner, I'll get a new one. On it goes. We're constantly looking for new things, better things to cover over the restless, agitated mind that's never content, never satisfied. But as soon as you practice mindfulness and investigate the truth, you practice meditation, it starts to change everything, doesn't it? You can find some inner peace then, being at peace with the way things are. Inner contentment, knowing the way things are, then you don't get so stressed, don't have so much suffering about the way things are. You can accept aging, sickness, even death, you can accept when you investigate it correctly. When you're mindful of your thoughts and your moods and feelings, you can accept painful feelings of body, painful feelings of mind. You can see with wisdom that they're impermanent and they're not self. There's a freedom that comes from meditation, and this brings this inner peace, inner happiness. So we say the Buddha and all the enlightened students of the Buddha are the happiest people in the world. And it's not because they get everything they want. Enlightened people, it could be men, women living out there in the world as well. It's not all monks and nuns. But enlightened people don't get everything they want, but they understand that. They see the truth of that. So they don't get deluded and build up false expectations that they're going to get everything they want, and they deserve to get everything they want, which is a kind of one of those real modern kinds of suffering, the stress of expectations, privilege, false assumptions that somehow nothing bad should ever happen to me or my loved ones, but if it happens to others, okay, that's the way the world is, but it should never happen to me. I should never get ill. Others get ill, I don't. I should never get stuck in traffic. Other people do, but not me. I should never lose my job. Other people lose their job, but not me. Other people get criticized, insulted, ignored, but not me. This shouldn't happen to me. The modern delusion is that we are entitled and deserve everything good that the world has to offer. And I certainly wish that on everyone. I wish everyone to have maximum happiness, but at the same time it would be foolish to expect it, because nobody gets maximum happiness and good things and good times all the time. We try our best and we wish each other well and we wish each other Happy New Year. But I know all of us are getting older this year. All of us will experience some aches and pains, some loss. All of us will probably get blamed for something we didn't say or didn't do. And we'll probably get blamed for something we did do as well. That's the reality. Ajahn Chah used to say, every day as a monk you bless people and you use these words, Ayuwana Sukha Bala. I wish you long life, good health, happiness, success, strength and good health. We wish you a good complexion even. We even wish you that. But, he used to say, who actually gets all of that? We get it some of the time, but half the time we don't get it. Even though the monks bless us and wish it for us, we don't get it. We get some success, but we also have to meet failure. We get good health some of the time, but we also get health issues and illness and pains and aches, injuries. We wish you wealth, to get rich and wealthy, but wealth goes up and down very quickly, it can change. We wish everyone good complexion, but when they get into a bad mood, they lose their good complexion, even though we've wished it on them. Because what takes away your good complexion is the stress and the irritation and the anger that sometimes invades our mind. So we wish you all these good things, but you'll not get them. So he even asked the question, he said, so does that make us stupid? We're wishing you long life, but nobody lives forever. We're wishing you good health, but nobody's healthy all the time. We wish you to have a good complexion and be vigorous and happy, but nobody's perfectly happy all the time, and their complexion darkens when they have some stress. So does that make us stupid? Well, it's a kind of balance, isn't it? We're wishing you these good things, and it's genuine, the wish. But then we're also acknowledging the imperfections of existence, the dukkha, the suffering of existence. And we know, well, we wish somebody to be healthy, live a long life, good, happy life, successful. But we know life is full of ups and downs as well. And we just have to help each other through it. And that's what Buddhism is doing. It's helping us get through and understand the ups and downs of life. I always like the story, Lumpur Kun, this amazing monk in Thailand who died a while ago now, but he used to give the best blessings, they say. Every monk gives a good blessing, but Lumpur Kun used to be famous for his blessings. All kinds of blessings for people to get rich, get the job they want, marry the person they want, get everything they wanted. He'd always be blessing them for that. But he's also very wise, so he didn't get deluded by those blessings. But because he gave such good blessings and he had such a powerful mind and people really trusted and respected him, people would go to get their blessing from him for all kinds of situations. He was like a national figure, national icon in Thailand. So there was the one year when everyone went off to the Asian Games from Thailand, the Thailand sporting contingent, men, women, all kinds of different sports. They all went to Lumpur to get blessed, and he taps them on the head, may you win, may you get gold. And of course, they don't all get gold, but a lot of them will. And they get blessed, they feel really charged up, go out, compete, do well. And they were interviewing everyone, and the entire Thai boxing team had gone to get a blessing, except for one boxer out of all of them. They compete in many weights, many levels, so there's a lot of competitors. They'd all got blessed, and they're preparing to go off, but the one didn't go. He was already an Olympic medalist. And this is the Asian Games, which is lesser than the Olympics. So they interviewed him and said, "Why didn't you get a blessing from Luang Por?" And he said, "Well, I've already got my Olympic gold. That should do me. That's my blessing." So off he went, confident, which is fine. And then they all competed, and all the boxers who got blessed by Luang Por got medals. I think they even got gold medals. It was a really exceptional Asian Games for them. But the one Olympic gold medalist who hadn't got a blessing didn't get it. So everyone said, "You didn't get your blessing, you see what happens." But in the deeper picture, bigger picture, it's just gain and loss, success, failure. It follows us through our life. Even in the same vein, that all the politicians would go to Luang Por Kun to get blessed before the election. So the leader of every political party in Thailand is full of all these little political parties all competing for seats in the parliament. You never get one outright winner. It's always a coalition and it's always negotiation. So all the leaders went off to get their blessing, and everyone's happy, and the TV crews and journalists were all there. And the first leader goes in, get the blessing, come out. They ask him, they interview him, what did Luang Por say? The Luang Por said, "I hope you win the election. I hope you form the government." The next leader goes in, comes out afterwards, "What did Luang Por say? I hope you win the election. I hope you form the government." And it went on like this. I think 8 different political parties went in, and they all got the same blessing to win. And then the journalists were getting a bit confused, and at the end, after 8 parties, they sort of, 8 parties, they're all going to win the election. How can that be? So they went back in to ask Luang Por, "You've blessed them all to win. You can only have one winner." And Luang Por said, "Well, yeah, there'll only be one winner, but I hope they all do well, and I bless them all, and may they all win. But I don't tell you who the winner will be." So blessings are like this, because life is not all a bed of roses. There's winners, there's losers, there's success, there's failures, there's health and loss of good health, there's wealth and loss of wealth, there's gain, loss, praise and blame. These are just the daily experiences of being a human being. So it's mixed up with dukkha. So the wise person opens their mind and says, yes, there's dukkha, let's do something about it, rather than always trying to run away from it or escape from it or hide from it. So it's about opening up, waking up to the truth. That's what the Buddha was encouraging. There's another question here from Taiwan. I am very confused about the meaning of non-self. I don't understand why when we cannot control our body, then it means the body is not mine. Therefore it is not self. Just like we cannot control the kettle when it would break, but we still claim this kettle in my kitchen is mine. Wow, whoever asked this question must have psychic powers, because this morning my kettle broke and Venerable Dhamma bought me a new kettle. So somehow you've got it into the question. Kettles break, it's dukkha. That's life, isn't it? If the kettle was yours, really, you would command your kettle, don't break. And I try that every time I get a new kettle. I say, don't break, just work perfectly for the rest of my life. But it never happens, does it? If you have one kettle per person, well, they last a long time, and that partly is part of the problem, isn't it? You think because it hasn't broken for so long that you've finally cracked it, you've got a kettle that isn't going to break, and it's yours, and you can just use it endlessly to boil water for your tea or coffee, whatever. But they'll all break in the end. There's no permanent kettle. They all break. And if it's in a place where lots of people use it, like the kitchen here, they break all the time, because when you get multiple users, things don't last, do they? So kettles are definitely not self. The body and the person is not mine. Well, it's something to investigate, isn't it? Not self you can look at from a few different angles, and one is to see that things are not self because they're made up and they come into being through causes and conditions. Different factors come together. So if any one factor is missing, one cause is not quite right, sometimes the whole thing collapses very quickly. And you say, oh, it's not self, because you recognize that causes and conditions are in control, really. So not self really means everything goes according to causes, conditions. There's no one person in there managing everything, controlling everything. There's different causes and conditions, and they're ultimately beyond our control. But this is why we try to control everything as much as possible in life, to take away the anxiety and the fear that will naturally come up when you're starting to see not self in experience. And why don't we want to practice vipassana? Why don't we want to see the truth? It's because at first it's frightening to us. It makes us feel uncomfortable, the fact that we aren't in control. We can't stop ourselves getting older, getting sick from time to time, and from dying. What is the biggest fear we have is death, because we don't see not self. Somebody who's changed their view, say like a noble one, Sotapanna upwards, they've changed their view about this body. They see this body is not self, it's not mine. The mind has given up that false way of thinking. So then the Sotapanna is not afraid of death. They still have some attachment to the body. The Anagami has gone beyond the attachment to the body. They just have a subtle sense of self left. But Sotapanna still has some attachment to the body, but the view has changed. So they're not bothered by the idea of death, because they know they've done enough good that when the body and mind separate, the goodness of their practice will look after them. And they've seen through the basic delusion of self. Where does it come from? It's an attachment to ideas and labels and trains of thought and concepts, beliefs, views and opinions that we add on to our experience. So we give us a delusion, give ourselves, excuse me, not self, it's a cough. I don't want to cough, but I still got a cough. We give ourselves the delusion of a self by building up everything around it, the assumption of a self. There's me, my name, my personal history, who I am, who I believe I am. But already that gets challenged when other people have a different view of us. We don't like it, don't we? Like when I first became a monk, they gave me a new name, Kalyano Bhikkhu. I wasn't even an Ajahn then, you're just humble Kalyano Bhikkhu. So I already had a new name. That's fine, got used to that, but then my mum and dad come to visit in the monastery and they start calling me Daniel, because that's the name they gave me. So then I say, no, I'm Kalyano, I'm Venerable Kalyano, or Bhikkhu Kalyano. And they say, no, you're Daniel. Already you get problems with just a name. Neither of them are self, are they? You're not Kalyano Bhikkhu, you could be any Bhikkhu if you want, but you're not Daniel either. You're anything. We can call each other anything, and we do. When we get angry, we don't call each other polite things, we call each other very rude things. They're just names that we add on to the experience, but they can cause arguments, pain, hurt. And then people would ask my mum, they say, well, how is your son, Daniel? And she would say, well, he's got a new name, which I don't like, Kalyano, but he's just the same. And then I say, no, I'm not the same. Now I'm more mindful, and I have my Vinaya training, and I'm a monk, and I wear robes. I'm not the same. My mum would say, no, he's just the same. Because what the mums do is they have their perception, their memory of little Daniel or little whoever it is, and that stays in their mind pretty much the whole life, I think, judging by the way my life went. I think most people it's the same. It's very hard to change that. So you become a monk, and then even when you become an Ajahn, after 10 years as a monk, you start teaching people, and they call you Ajahn Kalyano. And you give a talk, and then people come up to Mum and say, oh, you're so lucky to have a monk, Ajahn Kalyano. And she said, no, he's just little Daniel, you know. And you go, no, I'm an Ajahn. It's all not self, isn't it? You just put these labels on, attach to them, argue about them, complain about them, like them, dislike them. But it's all just labels and concepts, the superficial reality. And that extends out to everything, doesn't it? You know, what you own, your property, your possessions, your money, who you're related to, your family, your partner, your friends. I was talking about this today, you have friends, so you identify with your friends from a place of self. Okay, these are my friends. When I was about 18, I had many friends, obviously, at 18. There's one group of friends, 3 brothers who were friends, and then they fell out with another friend of mine. So that friend became their enemy, and then because I was friends with that person, those 3 brothers fell out with me. And they started calling me their enemy, even though I'd done nothing to warrant that other than being associated with the first guy. So I got 3 people who are now my enemies, even though I did nothing. So I, meet them because they live near me, and we go to the same places and know the same people. So you meet them, and every time you meet them, they go, we're not talking to you, you're our enemy, we hate you. Oh, okay. Simply because I knew this other guy. That went on for a couple of years. Nothing I could do, I just had to put up with it. So I had to deal with my own feelings of, why are they calling me enemy, and what did I do to deserve this? And that's how yourself manifests in that situation. And then, one day I met them after a few years, and they smiled and they were fine, and they talked nicely. So I said, what happened? They said, oh yeah, it's all in the past. We're friends again. I said, okay, great, I welcome that. But at the same time, I was already meditating by then. So I went away and I thought, what is it that determines whether someone's your friend or your enemy? Is it as simple as that? One day they say they're your friend, and the next day they're your enemy. And then they're your friend again. Where is the self in any of that? It's just like crazy. You could call it karma. But what is karma? It's causes and conditions, action and results. So obviously there must have been some karma in there. Maybe it was association with the first person who they fell out with. By association, I became also an enemy. So we have these phrases we chant, and we say, I am the owner of my karma, I'm born of my karma, I'm related to my karma. So sometimes we get karma kind of seems to be almost indirect, doesn't it? You're related to someone by family, by blood or friendship, and it affects you. Who you associate with, who's your friend, who's your enemy. Sometimes it's just determined by who you are in your family or your group of friends, where you're located, where you live. So karma has some subtle angles to it, but the whole point is karma is not self. It's cause and result, all the way through our life, and maybe from past lives as well. There's no self in that. But of course it's convenient to use the term self, otherwise we wouldn't even be able to talk like this. So we do use names, and we do have our personal karma and story, and everyone has their story, and we talk about things, and we give a label to ideas, concepts. It's useful. So Buddhism is kind of working on these two levels. On the ordinary level, yeah, there's a person who does good, does bad, makes karma, good things come back to them, bad things come back to them, who owns kettles, whose kettles break. And on the normal level, that's fine. This is superficial or assumed reality. This is samuti satcha. But then there's ultimate reality, paramata satcha, where there's just four elements, earth, air, fire and water, in every atom of every molecule, in every human being. And those atoms don't have Kalyano Bhikkhu printed on them or any other name printed on them. They're just atoms and molecules and earth, air, fire, water, solidity, cohesion, movement, gases, it's just the basic building blocks of reality, and they don't have a name. Even mental states don't really have a name, they just have their characteristics. So anger has a certain characteristic, goodwill, forgiveness, compassion has a different characteristic. Even they don't belong to anyone, and they come up through different causes and conditions. You direct your mind to think a thought of metta, good, you'll feel happy, it'll bring good results because it's good karma. But ultimately there's no self in that. You might say, I have goodwill for you, and it's a convenient way of talking, but ultimately there's no person having goodwill or no goodwill. It's just mental states, the mind, consciousness, body, mind. And Buddhism is helping us to go to this deeper reality, what we call paramata satcha. But of course, you still need to live in the world and communicate, so you work on both levels, but as you meditate, you're drawing closer to the paramata satcha, and that's where you get liberating wisdom, insight. When you really do see the deeper reality of things, then you can let go. And it's liberating. It's nice to let go of the term Kalyano Bhikkhu. So I could be Bhikkhu A, or Bhikkhu B, or Bhikkhu X. We can use those terms just to help remove a bit of self-identity view, can't we? And it's liberating. Yeah. That's why bhikkhus wear no hairstyle, just shaven head, one kind of robe. It's liberating. It's a kind of an expression already of non-self. So I guess sometimes you see people, they buy things in supermarkets and they just have the supermarket brand coffee, supermarket brand sugar, supermarket brand kettle. And in a way I think that's quite liberating if you could do that. But of course our sense of self and our pride and our attachment, our connoisseur, artistic mentality says, no, I don't want supermarket brands anymore. I want the best, hardest to get brand. And that becomes self-view, doesn't it? But sometimes we should also go for plain brands, teach ourselves to let go of this constant craving for distinction, for uniqueness and all of that, and just be an ordinary person with ordinary things. And that can be quite liberating. You should try it. Yeah. So, another question. When I think of that the forest tradition is the best in the world, does this mean I am attached in the way of Silapata Baramasa? Well, you have to ask yourself that question, because yes, you could become over-attached in the way of Silapata Baramasa, but not necessarily. Silapata Baramasa means that a blind clinging to rules, regulations, practices, rituals, ceremonies, rites, the kind of externals of the practice. Another expression of self-view, you might say, Silapati Baramasa and Sakaya Ditti, self-view, are interlocked. You can't avoid them. They tend to come up together and support each other. So yeah, even the good things that we practice, say you really love forest monks or nuns, teachers who have practiced well, Ajahn Chah, Ajahn Man, and all the others. You like the way they practice, the style of practice, living in the forest simply in a kuti, eating in a bowl with this kind of robes, with a very simple lifestyle dedicated to developing mindfulness and insight. And everything about it you love. Particularly if you associate with forest monks for a long time, you do tend to kind of appreciate the lifestyle, I think. And you might become really fond of it, you might say attached to it. So then, of course, well, there'll be situations which may test whether you're just blindly clinging on. So like, it may be someone comes along and say, oh, those monks meditate all wrong, they don't know what to do. And then you sort of, they're talking about my monks, my teacher, or my nuns. Maybe there's a bit of Silapata Baramasa slipping in there to your thinking. Or maybe someone comes along and say, well, my teacher teaches to you to meditate, reciting a certain verse that is not associated with forest monks. And that verse is the real way to Nibbana. And you say, well, we practice reciting Buddho, or we contemplate the body. And then you end up with a little bit of a disagreement on a meditation technique, for example. Maybe Silapata Baramasa is slipping into your thinking there. Or, I only like monks who wear dark, naturally coloured robes. Any kind of other coloured robe, maroon, orange, yellow, whatever, I don't like. Maybe that's Silapata Baramasa, because there's many good monks who wear different coloured robes. And you might be dependent on different traditions, different cultures, different countries, ethnic groups. Their monks often have different coloured robes. Scholar monks tend to wear the yellow or orange robes. Forest monks tend to wear the darker robe. But there's many good monks who wear different coloured robes. So if robe colour was enough, everyone in the forest tradition would be enlightened already. But unfortunately, we're not. Robe colour alone is not enough. And certainly it shouldn't be the basis for arguments and disparaging comments. You just don't know, do you? Somebody could wear different coloured robes and still be very pure, very wise, good person, good-hearted person, well-intentioned person. You have to learn through other means to find out about people. So it doesn't mean to say if you love the forest tradition, it's automatically an attachment, because of course we're practicing to go beyond attachment. But be aware, even the things you love and you identify strongly with can become an attachment and a cause of suffering. And that's not the purpose, is it? We're not here to argue about meditation techniques, the colour of robes, the way people chant, the way monasteries are set up. These things will vary from place to place, tradition to tradition. But what's the purpose of it? The purpose is to give us all the qualities of the Eightfold Noble Path that will liberate us from suffering. So keep coming back to the heart of the practice, and sometimes we do have to check ourselves against a checklist of, am I attaching too much to the rituals, to the way of chanting, to the way of meditation, to all the things we do, the way we bow. Some people bow one way, others bow another way. Check yourself, is that bringing up suffering for you as you go through your practice? Are you comparing with others, disparaging others, doubting about things? These are signs that maybe you're still caught into Silapata Baramasa. Ajahn Chah was very good at dealing with this, because Ajahn Chah received people from all over Thailand and all over the world, and many of the foreign monks, nuns, laymen, laywomen who came to him came from different backgrounds, different Buddhist backgrounds. Some were brought up on Zen, some brought up on Tibetan Buddhism, some were straight Theravada like Mahasi Sayadaw, Vipassana, Goenka, some were more Thai Theravada or Sri Lankan Theravada. There's so many different sects and schools of Buddhism, and they'd come to Ajahn Chah, but he'd try and get them to see common themes and threads, but also not to attach too much to their opinions and views on practice, but just to keep looking at the mind and developing the skillful qualities, mindfulness, investigation of the Dhamma. So he'd say things like, well, you have all these traditions, it's a bit like fruit in a basket. You can have many kinds of fruit in a basket, and they can all be in there together, and they don't have to be enemies or competing or attaching to one thing or another, but they can all be fruit that can be useful for a person to eat, and they can all stay in the same basket. So he was quite skillful dealing with questions of Silapata Baramasa. Sometimes there would be people who really like chanting, and so I'd send them off to somewhere where they didn't get much chance to chant with other people, maybe a very quiet little monastery where there wasn't any chanting. And then there were the monks who didn't like chanting, and he'd say, come out to the chanting, and they'd learn to chant very well. He'd often play around with people, not in a frivolous way, but to try and get them to see where they're attaching and how Silapata Baramasa can come up. Even as you're practicing for liberation, you can get attached to anything, basically. So he's quite good helping people to see through these things. Time is going on. Last question. There's two questions. Sometimes after a Dhamma talk, Ajahn chants an acknowledgement, Handamayang Ovadakatha Sadhukarang Tadamase, instead of Handamayang Dhammagataya Sadhukarang Tadamase. What is the difference between the two? A few words is all the difference is. The meaning is the same. It's an expression of satisfaction with the Dhamma, acknowledgement something good has happened. Someone's given some Dhamma teaching, all is good, all is well. Everyone is expressing their appreciation, satisfaction. Dhammagata means a verse of Dhamma or a teaching of Dhamma. Ovadagata means a teaching of Dhamma. It just doesn't mention the word Dhamma. Ovada means to teach, to give an ovada, a teaching. Dhamma can be a verse of recitation, a chant, or a teaching. So the terms can be used almost interchangeably. Not such a big thing, I think. And now the last question. How do you deal with someone who won't forgive you? Well, there's a number of qualities that will help in such a situation. I actually talked earlier about the three brothers who didn't forgive me for a few years. All I had to do really was just be patient and endure and not get angry with them was my main practice, and it seemed to work out in the end. I didn't give them cause to be angry with me, so eventually whatever anger they held faded out. You can only do what you can with your own mind and your own practice. Other people have to take responsibility for theirs. So we put effort into our own practice of forgiveness, letting go of our own anger, hostility. And you can trust that that is helping someone else's anger to diminish, because you're not provoking them or giving them further cause to be angry with you. But it depends on the situation and the person, doesn't it? If they've been really angry with you and maybe you did something that caused that, it may be a while before they heal. And you can only practice kindness, tolerance, forgiveness yourself, and that will be a supportive condition for their anger to diminish. But how quick and how well it diminishes is going to depend on a few different factors. if you've never done anything to them, and their anger and their lack of forgiveness is kind of not really based on anything strong or real, it should diminish quite quickly. But if there's some grounds in the past, a bad relationship and things have gone wrong, well, okay, it might take time. The important thing is to stop feeding the fire. Work on yourself, let go of your own anger, check yourself. Do I still hold anger, ill will towards that person, hatred? Is it still there? Keep letting your own anger go. Keep bringing up forgiveness from your side of it. And this should help them to improve. Hopefully it's not as bad as Devadatta and the Buddha. Devadatta in a previous life had been a trader, and the Buddha was a trader, and they're in a village. The Buddha was a bodhisattva in those days, he wasn't yet a Buddha. And this little old couple dug up some gold ornaments in their fields. They were penniless, but they had found these gold ornaments. They had a bit of hope. They thought, we might be able to make some money here. We're lucky. First person come along is Devadatta, the trader. Has a look. He knows it's gold. He knows it's worth a fortune, but he's a bit tricky. So he says, it's not really worth anything, but I'll give you a few cents, the equivalent of a few cents for it. I'll do you a favour. The couple are a bit suspicious. They're sure there must be more money in it than that. But, oh well, at least it's one offer of something, because they've got nothing. So they think, well, okay, we'll wait a day. If we haven't been able to sell it tomorrow, come back and we'll sell it to you for this small amount you're offering. So they sit with it for another day. Meanwhile, the bodhisattva comes along, sees what they've got, says, wow, you've struck big here, this is gold, you're going to get a lot of money for this, I'll buy it from you if you want. You'll make money and then I can sell it in the city, I'll travel there, I can get a bit of profit on it over there as well. We'll all be in a good situation, win-win. So they say, okay, so they sell to the bodhisattva. They make the most money they've ever seen or heard about, so happy. A real good New Year's Day story. Meanwhile, Devadatta comes along a bit later, finds out the Buddha to be the Bodhisattva has gazumped him. He's so angry. Insults the couple, tells them they're really stupid, but there's nothing to be done there, so off he goes, chasing after the Buddha, and finds the Buddha at the banks of the river Ganges, or the Bodhisattva at the banks of the river Ganges, and he's so angry that he's missed out on this big chance to make a real fortune, set him up for life. The Bodhisattva did it. So annoyed. He says, I'm so angry with you, I just hate you. I'm going to hate you this life and at every future life. And he grabs sand up in his hand from the bank of the river. He says, as many grains of sand there are in my hand, my fist, I'm going to hate you as many lifetimes as there are sand in my fist. So it set in motion this grudge, vendetta that just Devadatta followed the Bodhisattva life after life after life, hating him, not forgiving him, causing him trouble life after life, testing the Buddha's patience, his virtue, his metta. So in a way it was useful because it helped the Buddha become the Buddha. But at the same time, it must have been very tiresome and frustrating until the final life. And even then, the Buddha is the Buddha, successful, teaching people to become enlightened. And still he's got Devadatta on his back, trying to kill him, turn everyone against him, hating him, not forgiving him. Until finally, Devadatta realizes that the Buddha's been just so good, not getting angry with him, always forgiving him. He said, you treated me like a brother. That's how you practice forgiveness, isn't it? You treat people like your close relative. You're willing to forgive them what they've done. Devadatta woke up to the truth, realized that how good the Buddha had been, asked forgiveness, apologized, and then the earth swallowed him up. But he did the right thing at the end anyway. So that's a really good story to remind us, don't hold on to grudges. Forgive, let it go. Don't be like Devadatta and wait until the earth swallows you up. It's not worth it. Forgive them now. So we just do our best with that. Living in the world, we do hurt each other sometimes, but try to forgive, let it go, move on. And I'll leave it there tonight.